You know that feeling when you're just like walking down the street, maybe holding a coffee, trying to answer an urgent message on your phone, and suddenly you realize your jaw is clenched so tight your teeth actually hurt.
Oh, yeah, like your shoulders are practically up to your ears.
Exactly. Or it's that sensation of sitting on your couch at the end of the day. And you're technically relaxing, right?
Yeah,
But you still feel this persistent humming tension in the back of your neck.
right. I call it the background radiation of modern life. I mean, you're not in any immediate physical danger, but your body is just constantly bracing for impact. The baseline state for, well, so many people right now is just this low-grade, perpetual overwhelm.
It's like walking around with 100 browser tabs open in your brain,
Hmm.
and one of those tabs is playing incredibly loud, stressful music, and you have absolutely no idea which tab it is.
Yeah, that is the perfect way to describe it.
And the worst part is the usual advice for fixing that feeling is just, well, adding more tabs. We're told to read another productivity hack or, optimize our workflow, wake up earlier, or just somehow try harder to be perfectly zen.
Which is deeply counterproductive.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you are listening to this right now and feeling completely exhausted by the relentless pressure to be wildly successful, hyper-productive, and like emotionally bulletproof all at the exact same time, well, today's deep dive is built specifically for you.
We are essentially treating this as an active teardown of that exhaustion. And we have a really fascinating stack of material today to help us do it.
We really do.
We're looking at excerpts from Defining True Success, Reclaiming Your Personal Narrative, an essay called The Productivity of Simplicity, and a really interesting text on emotional regulation titled The Sovereign Currency of Silence.
What's so compelling about this stack is that instead of giving us, just another checklist of things to do, these sources look at the underlying mechanics of why we feel so drained in the first place.
Exactly. They strip away the overarching expectations we carry for our entire lives, the rigid rules we set for our mornings, and the way we just bleed energy in our moment-to-moment reactions. So let's start with the big picture, the macro pressure.
Right, the macro level.
Yeah, the first source talks about this pre-made checklist we are all handed from a very young age.
Okay.
Let's unpack this, because I think everyone listening knows exactly what this checklist is.
Oh, absolutely. It's the standard societal blueprint. And the truly fascinating part about this checklist is that it's handed to you before you even have a concept of your own identity.
Right.
You're given the answers to the test before you even know what subjects you're actually interested in.
Yes. The blueprint is remarkably consistent across the board. You are supposed to go to a prestigious university, secure a stable corporate job, buy a house, climb the career ladder, and accumulate a very specific set of assets. You check those boxes and boom, you supposedly win at life.
But the text highlights a very specific modern tragedy here. People are hitting their late 20s or 30s or beyond, checking off that final box and just waking up feeling completely empty.
They did everything according to the manual.
Exactly. They did everything right, yet the result feels entirely wrong. The source material refers to these milestones as the big lies of a happy life. But, it's really important to understand the mechanism behind why they feel like lies.
Right. It's not just that the goals are inherently bad, but
But it comes down to the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. When you're building a life based on external validation, doing things because society says they are valuable, you are running entirely on extrinsic fuel.
which requires constant cognitive effort to maintain. It's like, well, think of it like wearing a bespoke suit that was tailored to someone else's exact measurements. No wonder it feels suffocating, really.
Right.
You can force it to fit for a while, but it's going to restrict your breathing, and eventually the seams just burst.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. You are mistaking the symbols of success for the actual experience of it. If the checklist isn't rooted in your actual intrinsic desires, achieving those milestones doesn't generate a sense of fulfillment, it generates alienation.
Wow. Alienation from your own life.
Yes. You end up feeling like a stranger in the life you worked incredibly hard to build. You're exhausted because, honestly, maintaining a persona that doesn't fit you is practically a full-time job in itself.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. If we completely discard the corporate ladder, the house, the standard milestones, don't we lose the entire metric for forward momentum?
That's the fear, right?
Yeah. Without that structure, it feels like the alternative is just drifting. If we throw away the checklist, how do we even measure success without feeling like we're moving backward?
Well, that fear of stagnation is exactly what keeps people tethered to a checklist they actively dislike. We crave a universal grading rubric because it feels safe. But the text resolves this by arguing that true success is fundamentally non-standardized.
Okay, so it's entirely personal.
Entirely, which means the metrics for momentum have to be self-generated. The source gives a very clear contrast to illustrate this. For one person, true success and forward momentum might actually be running a massive, high-stakes global business.
Because for them, that high-stress, high-reward environment naturally aligns with their internal wiring. They aren't faking it. They genuinely thrive on that specific type of friction.
Precisely. But for someone else, success might look like running a small, cozy bookstore in a quiet town. Or, as the text specifically notes, hosting a podcast from home.
Oh, hey, that sounds familiar.
Right. But the point is, neither path is objectively better or worse. They are just different manifestations of authentic joy. The problem only arises when the person who actually belongs in the bookstore forces themselves into the global boardroom because they think it's the only valid way to be successful.
So for the person listening right now who's maybe commuting to that perfect job but feeling that distinct, crushing emptiness, what is the practical takeaway here? How do they begin to untangle that?
The source offers a very sharp diagnostic question. If you are feeling that exhaustion, you have to step back and ask, am I living my dream? Or am I living the dream my parents, my friends, or social media chose for me?
That is a heavy question to answer, honestly.
It is. Untangling it requires acknowledging that redefining your metrics for happiness is not a regression. The text actually concludes that this act of rewriting your own rules is the ultimate form of self-confidence. It's not a step backward at all.
It takes immense strength to look at a life that society applauds, admit that it doesn't fit you, and then systematically begin to change it.
It's the hardest work you'll ever do.
It really is a massive paradigm shift. And honestly, it perfectly sets up the next layer of pressure we need to talk about. Because if society dictates our overarching life goals through that macro checklist, our daily lives are heavily dictated by a micro checklist.
Ah, yes. The daily grind.
Yeah, primarily driven by social media. I'm talking about the modern obsession with the morning routine.
It's a direct pipeline. If the macro anxiety is, am I living the right life, that funnels directly into the micro anxiety of, am I waking up the right way?
Exactly. And our second source, the productivity of simplicity, really goes after this hard. It calls out what we can call the perfect influencer routine. We've all seen the content, right?
Oh, it's everywhere.
The aesthetic is flawless. The alarm goes off at 5 p.m. They immediately drink some complex multi-ingredient green juice. They journal their gratitude for a solid hour. They do a vigorous yoga flow as the sun rises.
Don't forget reading a chapter of a self-improvement book before 7 a.m.
Right. How could I forget? But, I mean, the societal messaging embedded in that content is incredibly potent and, frankly, quite aggressive.
The unspoken implication is that if your morning doesn't look like this rigid 10-step optimization process, you are inherently lazy. You are failing at the day before it has even officially begun.
But the text reveals something I think a lot of people secretly feel, but are terrified to admit out loud. For the vast majority of us, this immense pressure has the exact opposite of its intended effect. Just the thought of executing that routine makes people feel exhausted before their feet even hit the floor.
What's fascinating here is the cognitive mechanics of why that exhaustion happens. The secret isn't doing more things, it's doing the right things for you. Waking up and immediately forcing yourself through a complex sequence of tasks you don't naturally enjoy requires a massive amount of willpower.
Right. And willpower isn't infinite.
Exactly. It's highly depletable. If you force-feed yourself a 5.00 a.m. schedule that violently clashes with your natural biological rhythms, you are spiking your cortisol, your stress hormone, right out of the gate.
It's like treating your morning as a high-friction obstacle course. If your willpower is a battery and you start your day by running a highly demanding app that you actually hate, you're draining yourself down to 40% before you even leave the house.
Yes, you spend all your energy just trying to perform wellness, leaving very little capacity for your actual job, your relationships, or, your real life.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. So are we just throwing in the towel? Doesn't skipping the 5:00 a.m. alarm just validate the idea that we are being lazy? Sometimes doing hard things is necessary to build discipline, right?
Well, discipline is a tool, not a religion. It is only useful when directed toward an outcome that actually benefits you. Force-feeding that 5.00 a.m. schedule to someone who hates it will only drain their productivity. The source argues that a truly effective morning routine should be wonderfully simple. It should act as a gentle on-ramp to the day rather than a test of endurance.
The examples in the text are just so grounded. It suggests something as simple as sitting in a chair and enjoying a quiet cup of coffee without looking at a phone for the first 15 minutes. That's it. That is the entire routine.
Or simply playing a favorite song while getting dressed, just letting your brain wake up without demanding immediate output.
Think about the psychological shift it occurs when you adopt that model. When you remove the intense pressure to be perfect, you completely eliminate the shame of failing to meet an impossible standard.
And shame is an incredibly heavy cognitive load. When you stop waking up to a test you are already failing, you stop feeling lazy.
Because you aren't fighting yourself anymore. You're working with your own nature instead of against it.
Exactly. Without that burden of manufactured failure, genuine motivation has the space to surface. You preserve your battery for the actual complexities of the day.
Which brings us to the most difficult part of the equation. So, we've stripped away the exhausting life goals. We've reclaimed our morning routine. Your battery is fully charged. You are feeling centered. But even with a simple morning, the moment you step out the door, the world starts testing you.
Oh, reality immediately asserts itself. The world does not respect the peaceful morning you just curated.
Not at all. How do we handle the sheer volume of daily provocations without burning out? We step outside and instantly someone cuts us off in traffic.
This is where our final source, the sovereign currency of silence, provides a really profound framework. It identifies that in our fast-paced society, we are constantly bombarded with these micro-triggers.
Right, these aren't necessarily life-altering catastrophes. The text focuses on the mundane friction of daily life. A rude online comment, a minor traffic jam, an unexpected change of plans.
Because of the frequency of these triggers, most people have defaulted to living in a state of constant reaction. Our brains are evolutionarily wired to notice and respond to threats, right? But the brain doesn't always distinguish between a physical threat and an ego threat.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so when someone cuts you off in traffic, your amygdala treats it like a survival situation. You react instantly, you yell, you complain, you fire off an angry reply to a rude email. The external environment completely dictates your internal state.
But choosing not to react carries a weird social stigma, doesn't it? If someone is blatantly rude to you and you absorb it with silence, the common perception is that you look weak. People assume you're being apathetic.
The source entirely refutes that assumption. It argues that reacting impulsively is actually the weaker position because it proves your emotional state is easily controlled by external forces. Choosing not to react means your peace of mind is worth more than someone else's drama. Pausing before acting shifts you from being controlled by emotions to being in control of your life.
Here's where the text's core metaphor gets really interesting. It asks us to visualize emotional energy as a literal daily fiat currency. Imagine you wake up every single morning with a set budget in your wallet. If you have a limited daily budget of energy, getting angry over a minor traffic jam is like spending a crisp $100 bill on a piece of chewed gum.
It is just a terrible investment of your daily funds.
It's financial ruin for your nervous system. You are going bankrupt over things that do not matter.
Which forces a very uncomfortable realization about locus of control. Successful, confident people protect their energy. The text points out that people who have successfully defined their own lives are fiercely protective of this currency. They know not every action requires a reaction.
And in that pause, they evaluate the return on investment of reacting.
Yes. They recognize that silence is often the most powerful response you can give. An online troll or a passive-aggressive colleague is looking for a reaction, right? They are looking to siphon your energy. When you offer silence, you retain your capital. You stay in control of your own internal economy.
So what does this all mean? Let's tie these threads together for you, the listener. We started by looking at the physical sensation of modern overwhelm, that clenched jaw, that feeling of running on empty.
And the sources have shown us that this exhaustion is not a mysterious ailment. It's the logical outcome of how we are managing our internal resources against external demands.
We've seen how to reclaim our life's narrative from society's checklist. We don't have to spend all our energy running an operating system built by society if it doesn't fit our hardware. We saw how to reclaim our mornings from influencer culture by removing friction. And finally, we saw how to reclaim our emotional energy from daily triggers using the currency of silence.
I think if there is one overarching takeaway to remember, it's this. Feeling overwhelmed is not a personal failure. You are not broken, and you are not lacking discipline. It is a natural result of trying to live up to external expectations that were never designed for you in the first place. You're exhausted because you've been running someone else's race.
It changes everything when you realize the system is what's mismatched, not you. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on that idea of energy as a currency. If you start looking at your daily emotional energy as a highly exclusive VIP currency, what investments in your current life might be headed for bankruptcy? And more importantly, who or what no longer deserves a line of credit from you?
That's a great question to ask yourself tomorrow morning.
Definitely let that guide how you spent your energy this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a breath, protect your capital, and we will catch you next time.